Hello and welcome to Theatre.Reviews with Paul Severn.
On the whole, I loved Phaedra by Simon Stone at the National Theatre's Littleton Auditorium. There was really just one element I didn't like. But first, let me tell you what was so good about it. Don't worry if you're not keen on Greek tragedy. This is not a production full of togas and choruses. It's a bang-up-to-date tale of a politician who has an affair. The essential story of Phaedra is still there, as told in ancient Greece by Euripides, in ancient Rome by Seneca the Younger, in the middle of the last millennium by Racine, and many times over since, including relatively recently by Sarah Kane. It's always been a tale of forbidden love, originally the princess falling in love with her stepson. But in this new version, the young man is already in his 40s, and he's the son of a former lover. So, not a stepson, and certainly not a young man being taken advantage of. The forbidden love here is, on the face of it, that of someone whose passionate feelings lead her into infidelity. Simple adultery. Although not that simple, as it turns out. I guess most of us can understand the way love, or lust, can overtake reason. Our protagonist, called not Phaedra but Helen, is a shadow cabinet minister. You could say that her forbidden love is not so much for someone other than her husband, but her love of herself. Because this is a play dominated by an examination of a certain kind of liberal middle-class people who appear to have no moral code beyond what they feel. We first meet a family bickering over breakfast. A teenage son is uncontrolled in his language and subject matter in front of, and indeed towards, his parents. Older daughter, who's just visiting, is not much less restrained. The affable father jokes with them about sex. It seems to be a family without boundaries. Well, so what? The liberal principles of treating the children as equals, as quasi-grown-ups, may be admirable. But in this case, the children do seem to have become self-centred and lacking in respect. Helen, their mother, leads by example, and this is most brought home by the way they speak over one another, barely listening. Again, your own opinions about bringing up children may mean that you find this scene appalling or laugh out loud funny, or both. And we also see, or are meant to see, an English for which read First World or imperialist even, indifference to other cultures. For example, when Helen spent time earlier in her life in Morocco, she didn't bother to learn the language. And she hasn't bothered to find out where her black best friend was born. Then Sufyan arrives. He reminds Helen of his father, her past Moroccan lover, and he makes clear he reciprocates the feelings that she has for him. It's not just that he's like his father physically, he too is a political activist, and that reminds her even more of how she has traded physical excitement for a boring marriage, and given up the thrill of activism for the compromise of party politics. I don't need to tell you how often an older person has an affair to try to recapture their lost youth. Despite the changes to the plot and the modern setting, this is still a Greek tragedy in its structure, so I won't go any further with the story except to say Simon Stone has retained those ancient ideas that people who misbehave get punished and revenge moves through the generations. So there are many twists, and it does all end badly. In fact, the ending is very dramatic, almost melodramatic. It's a well-told story with much comedy and many great set scenes. One in particular takes place in a restaurant where the family and close friends are gathered for Helen's 60th birthday. Revelation follows revelation in a scene that wouldn't go amiss in a farce, with glasses smashing, home truths spewing out, and Helen all the while lamenting loudly about the distraction from her celebration. The acting is marvellous. Janet McTeer is so on point as this totally self-absorbed politician. She talks at speed with passion and intensity and expresses her feelings so naturally that you forget she's acting. I felt we were already witnessing one of the acting performances of the year with a script to match. Paul Chahidi, as her husband Hugo, is terrific too in the role of this put-upon husband and father who manages to keep afloat with jokes and diplomacy. He's charming and likeable, but also exudes insignificance. You can see why he appealed to the dominating Helen, but also why she was ready to be unfaithful to Sofyan, played by the handsome, charismatic Assaad Bouab. All the cast impress, but a special word for
Akiya Henry as Helen's friend and fellow Shadow Cabinet member, Omolara.
She portrays an easygoing person who seems to take Helen's ignorance of her background and her mockery of her religion with good humour. But you sense an iron core that emanates from her moral grounding, something Helen lacks. And she has the kind of painted smile that conceals an objective, calculating mind. So what didn't I like? Well, the design. All the action takes place within a glass box, which revolves. Now, this was an interesting coincidence, because only the night before I saw Phaedra, I saw the Lehman trilogy, which also features a revolving glass box. But whereas the latter worked, this didn't. The effect is perhaps of making us feel like the Greek or Roman gods who would look down on humans and their folly. Or perhaps it could suggest the way in which the characters are trapped, in this case in a cycle of betrayal and revenge. The many uprights may have been intended to reinforce the idea of the characters being in a prison, but they too often obscured the faces of the actors. And that was a shame, not to be able to see the agonies their characters were going through. But the biggest problem caused by the design is that every change of scene took forever. Sometimes the scene change was longer than the following scene. I imagine this was because when the action takes place simply on the stage floor, in most productions, scenery can be rolled on and off easily. But when you're dealing with a raised glass box with awkward access and egress, everything takes much longer. The extended blackouts would frankly have been intolerable, but for Stefan Gregory's sound, which played while we waited and which was hypnotic. Now, designer Chloe Lamford's talent is beyond question. The sets within the box did actually look fantastic. It's just that the box itself didn't work. I don't want to lay all the blame on at her door, because it could well be that she was simply doing what director Simon Stone wanted. The last production by him that I saw was Yerma at the Young Vic. Great production, but that too took place behind glass walls, so maybe it's his thing. Anyway, a wonderful script, first-class acting, both worthy of a 5-star production, let down only by the design. Even so, I give Phaedra at the National Theatre 4 stars. I hope you enjoyed this review, and please like, comment, and best of all, subscribe so you'll be the first to know about my future reviews. You can also find me on Mastodon, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you want to read my reviews, why not visit Theatre.Reviews. Thank you for watching.